Now we have to see if Kirby Smart can get them over the hump. Those were words from Bruce Feldman, one of the few national reporters that I take seriously. He said that earlier in the month on Paul Feinbaum's show. Let me read you some of the full quote here that Bruce had to talk about. I don't know if it's now or never, but it seems like this is a really ripe window for Georgia to make a run at the national title. Florida has to replace not just a quarterback, but Kyle Pitts, the best player there in a decade, meaning Tim Tebow. Florida was not very good on defense. You look at Alabama, they had a great team last year, but they have to replace a lot of guys. It's not to say that they're going to fall apart. I think we all know how that goes typically. This is probably as good a chance on paper as you would think Georgia may have to get over the top. They've been close, and you feel like they are close. A lot of recruits have bought into that. Now we have to see if Kirby Smart can get them over the hump. Yep, you got that right. It's time. That's obvious to me. That doesn't mean it will happen, and that doesn't mean that you are off firing the guy if it doesn't. It just means it's time. And there have been a lot of opportunities for Georgia, painful ones they've not taken advantage of over the last 20 years specifically, 2002, 2005, 2007, 2012, 2017, 2018. But certainly losing on the last play of the game, which cost them national championship against Alabama in 2012, 2017, those are the ones that hurt the Georgia community the most. But when you look at what Bruce had to say, now we have to see if Kirby Smart can get them over the hump. I think that's all this is in 2021. You know, we know in this season that Georgia is going to play two of the best teams in the country. We know they're going to play one in Clemson, and almost certainly they'll play Alabama in the SEC championship game. Although Texas A&M is making some noise, we know that they'll have to get out of the conference. I mean, you're not going to be there. There are special rules for Alabama. Nobody else gets that though, and I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, you know, you look at 2011, Alabama doesn't win the national champion. It doesn't win the SEC championship, and they go play for the national championship. 2017, same situation. So we know that Alabama will get the benefit of the doubt, and we know that teams like Notre Dame will get the benefit of the doubt. Georgia will not. They're going to have to win the SEC, and that's all there is to it. And to do that, they're going to have to get there, which is why he's talking about the Gators. And then they'll have to win that game, which is why he's talking about Alabama. I mean, those are the three games. It's Clemson, Florida, and Alabama. Could Texas A&M be in the SEC championship game? I mean, they could, but they would have to show that they could beat Alabama, which they've not shown in the last 8 times they've played Alabama. So we'll just have to see. But this is a great opportunity. You know, the challenging part for Georgia and Kirby is the schedule is tough when you look at who you're starting with and you look at the path that they've got. They are confronted with having to deal with playing 2 teams that will likely be in the playoff just to get into the playoff. And, you know, a loss to Clemson would be hard to explain away at the end of the year. I think for Clemson, they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're playing in a league where they're going to win it. It's not a good league. They're the best team that they're dealing with in that league is someone somewhere around the level of the Gators, which is North Carolina. Maybe not even that good. So, you know, Clemson's path is, if they beat Georgia or not, I think they go to the playoff one way or the other. You know, Georgia then, you know, let's say you lose to Clemson, you're going to have to win out. I mean, obviously you would have to beat Florida to get to Atlanta anyway, but and Georgia should. I mean Georgia should be a 10-point win over Florida. I don't see them losing that. And them losing that game, you should be asking a lot of questions then. I want to see what it's like, but just from sitting where I'm at right now, there's really kind of no excuse for losing that game. So there really shouldn't be much in the way of Atlanta. But then you got to get to Atlanta and beat, you know, in the college football playoff quarterfinals, you're going to have to beat the team that most people favor to win the thing. So that's the challenging part. But at the end of the day, and they have a trip to Auburn. I don't want to skip over that. I don't think Auburn's going to be anything unbelievable. But in this league, you just don't ever know when you're going to be confronted by somebody who's having a good year or having a good day. In the Big 12, the ACC, you don't really get that. You just don't. So that's something that Georgia have to watch out for. But, last year's the first time they lost 2 regular season games in the SEC, and last year they played 10 games. So in the league, or 9, whatever it was. So a little bit of a weird deal last year. So they typically only drop a game, and they typically do drop a game. But that, I'm not sure they're going to be able to get away with that this year. Then again, they're not playing Auburn was, ran up to number 4 the year they lost to him. LSU, Carolina, which was bizarre. And then last year, Alabama and Florida. So not a lot of losses piling up there. But I don't know if you lose to Clemson that you're going to be able to, I don't know. I mean, if you win the league, then you're going to go. I think if you have 2 losses, you would still go. But if you lose to Florida, you're not going to play in the SEC championship. And then you would really have questions to ask about, is Kirby the right person to get him over the hump? I have no reason to believe otherwise. I mean, I don't know why you would replace him, but I do think I think right now it's a question is, can Kirby Smart get Georgia over the hump? Well, he hasn't done it yet, so it's a relevant question. Can Jim Harbaugh, can Sarkisian at Texas, I'm trying to think of good coaches. And, to me, Ed Orgeron, whether he's beaten Kirby twice or not, they're not the same. I mean, one understands totally how to run a program, and the other one won a national championship on a crazy year where he perhaps had the best team in college football history. Well, that ain't running a program. I mean, we were seeing at LSU what disaster looks like, and it's just their program athletically speaking, the whole thing. But it's Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and Kirby. I think they're all in the same position. I mean, can these guys win the national championship? And specifically, there's one person in the way every time, Nick Saban. I mean, those teams are confronted with Nick Saban and Alabama. But Alabama ain't Alabama without Nick. So you're going to have to get through all of these games. It is curious to see, Dabo does okay in these one-off games. Lately, they've not been unreal in non-ACC power games. Ohio State this past year was embarrassing. The LSU game last year in 2019 was embarrassing, that loss. Those have not been ideal games. They lose to Notre Dame, which I guess was a conference. I mean, whatever. Come back and redeem themselves against Notre Dame. That was not a great Notre Dame team, I think, as we've seen. I mean, they were okay. But I just think that Alabama, Clemson, but specifically Alabama is going to get the benefit of the doubt. Clemson will have the ability to win its league, and the excuses will be made that they won their league, and that's it. The notion that we're putting the best 4 teams in the playoff, that for me went away in 2018 when Georgia didn't get in. They were clearly one of the best 4 teams. They didn't get in. It was silly. And we saw Oklahoma lose by 100 or whatever it was. And then a year later, which Georgia I don't think really had a case in 19, but maybe they did. They finished number 4. And you see Oklahoma getting absolutely drilled by LSU. So 18 was Notre Dame had no business being in there, but they were undefeated. And so I think one thing that you're going to see here in the near future is now that we're probably going to 12-team playoff, I mean, it's almost certain, that will give Kirby more opportunities. I mean, when you look at that 18 team and the 19 team, they both would have gotten into the playoff, and the 20 team would have as well. So I don't think the 20 team would have won the national championship, but I would have been curious to see a rematch with Alabama to see what would have been different against the Tide with JT Daniels playing. It would have been curious for me to see, because I was the only person that went to that on the beat that went to every single one of these games in 2020, and it was a very different team in Atlanta than the team that was in Jacksonville. So I would be very curious to see what that was like. it will also mean that there's a more about how you can develop your team to surge at the end of the year. A tournament makes you even more critical to get better as the year goes on. But I do think this is a great opportunity for Georgia and Kirby to get the job done. I think Kirby will win the national championship at some stage. But I thought Mark Richt would too. With that said, the comparisons really should end there. I mean, Kirby has gotten the entire infrastructure at Georgia behind him, and Mark never got that. Whether he didn't demand it or not, he never got that. So the difference now is that it's just Alabama in the way. It's not, Florida and, all this stuff. It's just Alabama. And that's the thing, is Kirby's got to do it. And a lot of people who have said to me the first one's going to be the hardest one. Well, you got that right. Let's talk about it more. Dean Legge at Dog Post. We'll see you over on the website.